I mentioned, on the glory of a treadmill this morning with my iPad, watching the newest episode of The Mandalorian, came home, and then Ann said, wait, there was a new episode of The Mandalorian? Because, she didn't know I was doing that on the treadmill. So we popped it on again and watched it again.
So you watched it twice this morning.
So I watched it twice this morning. And by the way, I should tell you of a quick conversation. I put that for those of you who follow me on Twitter, I have this up on Twitter, quick conversation at the end of Mandalorian. I said, and you know what's interesting, honey? Deborah Chow, who is going to be directing the Obi-Wan series, directed this episode. And then Ann goes, Obi-Wan series? Is he going to find a Baby Yoda too? And then she goes, oh, wait a minute. All Star Wars shows should find a Baby Yoda. And then all the Baby Yodas should find each other and do a Baby Yoda Avengers movie. I'm like, I'm so happy that I'm married to you.
Like Baby Muppets.
Like the Baby Muppets. There you go. The Muppet Babies. Anyway, the new episode of Mandalorian dropped. And I'm going to tell you, before we go over to Robert Meyer Burnett, this is the best episode yet. Oh my God, I love this episode. And I feel like there's a rule over there at, and I'm not going to give any spoilers away here, but I feel like there's a rule over there at Lucasfilm that for The Mandalorian, every episode has to come up with a killer catchwon't whether it's I have spoken. Or this is the way. It's like, yeah, and I won't give away the context of it. I thought this was great because it did a couple of things that this episode did. One, it really got into more of the background of understanding what's going on with the Mandalorians themselves. And I have a few theories, but I'll save those for the spoiler video a little bit later today when Ann and I do the spoiler video. It again, you see a development. I don't know how they're doing this with a guy wearing a mask the whole time. You're seeing a development and an evolution in the character himself. Of course, you got a little bit of Baby Yoda. You get a little bit of we're starting to develop a picture about what's going on with this little creature. Why is this thing so valuable at this point? All that kind of stuff. I just think the tone and the atmosphere have been killer. And again, it has fed into the thing. And one of the things that I've really liked about The Mandalorian so far, that they established in the very first episode was, this is a serialized Western. This is a Western serial. And they are carrying that through every step of the way. And I got to tell you guys, I thought last week's was the best one yet. I didn't need this week's to be as good as last week's because I thought last week's was fantastic, but it exceeded it. And I'll tell you what, speaking about Deborah Chow, I was very excited because Deborah Chow's got an incredible resume. Like we've talked about on this show, her resume, she has worked on AAA shows throughout her career over the last number of years. She's wonderful. Then when I heard that she's directing all of the Obi-Wan series, I thought that's interesting because normally that's not what happens. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. I have never been more excited for the Obi-Wan series than I am today after seeing what she did with this episode. Now, I want to just jump over quick here because that is the theory, that is the query of today's question of the day. I asked you guys, I literally just put this up about 15 minutes ago. I asked you guys, the new Mandalorian episode 3 is here. Where does it rank for you so far amongst the episodes we've seen? As of right now, about 800 of you have had a chance to vote on this. 78% of you are saying this is the best one yet.
Wow.
15% of you are saying it is the second best one yet. And 7% of you are saying it's the third best one yet. And of course, there have only been 3 episodes so far. So that's kind of where we're at. I effing loved this episode. Dug it. And we've got somebody else here in the room who has seen this episode. Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, you saw it. You were not quite as taken with this episode as I was, personally.
Well, here's the thing. I'm coming at it from sort of a different perspective. I thought I loved the story and I loved everything that we learned and what we were shown. And I thought that was great. My objection, but I think my disappointment, and I understand why I feel this way and why it is the way it is. The scope of the storytelling is vast and it's large and it's big, and you're learning a lot about Star Wars mythology, the mythology about the Mandalorian, all this stuff. But from a production standpoint, it seems like it's all set on one street. And it is. Like The Mandalorian, literally, they spend a lot of time, and I understand why, because I even did a show about Lucasfilm's new stagecraft technology that they're using to make this show, which is amazing. But it's like we have a lot of scenes where the Mandalorian walks down the street, and it's like all these locations are right next to each other. It's like, let's go into door number 1, and there's this thing going on. And then there's door number 2, and then there's this secret base, which is door number 3. And it seems to me like the scope of this show, the storytelling is wide and expansive, but the scope, like the actual location, seems really tiny, and I really felt that in this episode. Now here's the thing. It's like you said, John, it's a Western serial. It feels like you're in a Western town, which makes sense because in a Western town, it's not like you had a sprawling metropolis. A Western town is a Western town.
Right.
And so that's sort of my objection. And my only other objection is I think I want the Mandalorian to be more of a badass than he is.
Yeah, now you and I are at odds on this.
He always
In
gets,
what way, Robert?
Well, he always gets into these scraps, right? Where and a part of that has to do with the actual setting. Like there is a battle in the streets in this particular episode, which is very cool. And what happens in this battle is very cool. But the battle seems like it takes place in about 20 feet of space. And I know it's a street and all that, and from a production standpoint, it's keeping the budget down. But what they're trying to do is large, but it feels small. And that bothers me.
Yeah, and I disagreed. I didn't get that feeling at all. I get a tremendous, like if you sit down and do a laundry list, some of which we can't talk about yet because it was in today's episode. But when you go through the laundry list of all the badass things that the Mandalorian has done, I don't know. But listen, that's the thing. One of the things that you said that I absolutely have to concur with is that, there's a number pieces. I mean, he's gone off world and all that kind of stuff, but it does kind of feel like when you're talking about, and this goes all the way back to the first episode,
right?
That, the Bounty Hunters Guild is on that corner.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian hideout is over on that corner. And this former Imperial thug is over on that corner.
Right.
It's like, what was the Daniel Day-Lewis movie that he did with Martin Scorsese?
Gangs in New York.
Yeah, it's very Gangs in New York. It's like the five corners, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of what it felt like a little bit. And I concede that. I guess that didn't bother me, though. It doesn't bother me on that level.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a TV show, and they're trying to do a Star Wars. It's supposed to look like a Star Wars movie.
And it feels like it.
Even though it's a very expensive show, and what they're trying to do is pretty epic, but it just feels, from a production standpoint, it feels a little small to me.
Right. Guys, the question is, have you guys had a chance to see the new episode of The Mandalorian, The Sin? If so, what did you think? We'll check in back. Again, normally I don't do the question of the day this early on in the show. We'll go back and check in on that a little bit later, because maybe some of you guys have some different ideas, or maybe some of you are just joining us because you just finished watching the episode. But anyway, jump on down the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right.